Club employees, how dirty is the average club? And what's the dirtiest thing you've witnessed? In Phuket, Thailand, I saw a dancer come out on stage holding an empty bird cage. Her assistant placed a long neck bottle on the stage, and the dancer squatted, hovering about a foot above the bottle. She proceeded to throw a ping-pong ball for her. And it landed directly on the lip of the bottle. Her assistant switched it out and put another bottle there. She did this a total of 3 times. It was mesmerizing. Remember the empty birdcage? Well, after the ping-pong balls, she lifted one leg up and pointed for us to look at her downtown area. We saw something moving, and a tiny little beak emerges. A few seconds later, a small bird drops out of her, flies around the room, and lands in the bird cage. She closes the cage, takes a bow, and leaves. My friends and I were absolutely dumbfounded. Before we continue, do us a quick favor. Smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. It was my 21st birthday, and I had never been to a club before, so I decided, why not? I went with a group of guy friends, and I was the only fully dressed woman there. Yet, I still felt like the odd one out. One of my friends was super shy. He was hilarious, but so damn shy. We both got pretty drunk, and I thought it'd be fun to buy him a dance. A nice, but very ghetto, lady took him back for the private dance, and I stayed up by the stage, throwing money and getting random buns in my face. About 5 minutes later, the bouncer comes over and says, your boyfriend needs you. Boyfriend? I was confused, but then I realized he meant my friend Matt, who was back with the dancer. I asked what was going on, but before he could respond, the dancer comes running out of the back room, covered in puke. My jaw dropped, like eyes wide open. I rushed back there to find my friend, covered in puke, crying and trying to clean himself up. I grabbed him, sat him down, and used some napkins to clean up the mess. Then I ran to the bathroom to apologize to the dancer, gave her a $100 tip, and kept apologizing. She definitely wasn't too happy about it, but honestly, I couldn't blame her. When I got my friend out to the car, I was finally able to ask him what happened. He looked at me with solemn eyes and said, I smelled her lady bits. Story 3. Girly bar in Pattaya, Thailand. I walk in through the curtain, and there on the catwalk are 4 girls on their backs with their legs on their air, and the bald spots of 4 retired white guys down in their special area, dog bowling the crap out of them. One of the old guys comes up with a glistening face, for what I assumed was air, when he taps his mate next to him on the back and indicates that he wants to swap. They both laugh, do a sort of awkward, too excited, boomer high five and switch places, both diving straight into their traded area without even wiping their faces. Guy next to me goes, your mouth is open, better close it before that girl tries to fire an ice cube in it. Before I can register what he says, an ice cube flies past my head, and there's a roar of laughter coming from a staged shower area, where another woman has one leg propped up on the side of it and is loading another ice cube into her back door. Catch this one, she says before doing a slight wince and blasting that cube out and onto my shirt. Laughter erupts again, and the guy next to me grins and asks, first time in Thailand? No word of a lie. That place can be messed up. Story 4. So, my brother used to manage a club. Well, floor manager, which isn't the same thing, but he told me to say it. Anyway, he couldn't drive for a long time, so I had to take him to work pretty often. It was just before opening, so I just partook of the taco bar as recompense for my efforts. Only a couple of regulars were ever in that early anyway, so I just hung out with my brother and the DJ and watched the second string. Girls with C-section scars and open sores work the floor. Anyway, this girl runs up to my brother and says there's been an accident, and then runs back off to the fantasy room. Shady folk came in there. My brother carried a taser and pepper spray, as situations sometimes became violent. So, figuring accident meant a crazed patron, we all sprinted to the fantasy room. There was crap. Everywhere. A regular, nicknamed Freckles by the girl, liked it when girls tooted on his face. You can connect the dots explaining his nickname by yourself. One of the girls, before fulfilling Freckles' fantasy, had also partaken of the taco bar before Freckles' arrival. The SOP. Umberto grabbed some paper towels, scooped up what he could, and then wiped down the rest using whatever mystery mix was in the mop bucket. I appreciated the effort. It probably had bleach in it, but I couldn't shake the thought. Now those tiny crap particles were getting lovingly spread across every inch of the floor as Umberto kept mopping like nothing happened. Tacos were aight. Story 5. This is somewhat related, but here's a fun story. This summer, a good friend of my brother's and our families got married, and I was invited to the bachelor party, which of course ended up at a club. I found myself sitting on Perv Row between one of my brother's super reserved friends, Peter, and the guest of honor's best friend, Aaron, who I had never met before that night. So on one side, I'm joking with Peter about trying not to touch anything in the bar, and on the other, there's Aaron, being loud and filthy. Now, if you've never been to a Canadian club, let me tell you, you're in for a treat. Our dancers are bottomless, and instead of singles, we use dollar coins. The best part, the dancers have prizes. After their main dance, they walk down Perv Row and stick a keychain or fridge magnet on their special areas, and whoever manages to land a coin on it gets to keep it. Long story short, early in the night, I won a magnet. Later on, Aaron was joking around with one of the girls and decided she should win a prize from him. So he grabbed my magnet, which had been sitting on the counter, gave it a full lick, and slapped it on his forehead. Amid all the laughing, I could hear Peter on the other side trying not to puke. After the chaos died down, I explained to Aaron what he had just done. His response, "Oh gross, I hope I don't get chlamydia. Where's the waitress?" Fun fact, I won a second magnet, and after giving them a good wash, they're both proudly on my fridge today. Because I'm a classy gentleman. Story 6. I worked in clubs, cocktail server, bartender, waitress, for almost 15 years, and I would claim to have seen it all. The clubs that I have worked in have been quite diligent with the cleaning process. Mirrors were cleaned all the time, the bar was cleaned after hours by a cleaning crew, secondary to us servers doing a sweep after the ugly lights come on, and the bathrooms are always cleaned throughout the evenings and of course after hours. That being said, the couches in the private areas are scary. As staff, we never sat on them. Customers are known to be messy, and yes, there are likely to be bodily fluids being exchanged or wiped on the couches. Many men would go into the bathroom prior to getting a dance and put on a rubber inside so that if the inevitable happens, it would be less messy for cleanup. That certainly isn't to say that we didn't find our share of discarded rubbers on the floor near the couches after hours. Full contact is actually illegal here, but it was never a surprise to see a girl, Bear, dancing away on a customer. The first club that I worked in had roughly 10 girls that were brought to work from a different country. They would get up onto the counters and pee into the sinks. We never knew why. Obviously, that was more so in the staff/dancer bathrooms, not the ones intended for public. Regardless, it was disgusting to think that we staff were to wash our hands there and then handle drinks. Don't put your money where your mouth is, especially in clubs. We washed our hands often and had sanitizing liquid at our bar and stations to cleanse our hands that had touched money that had come into contact with dancers. I was always shocked at how many customers were willing to put money into their mouth and lay back on the stage to have it snatched off by a dancer's lady flaps while she was doing the splits. The tops of the toilet tanks often have powdery residue on them, obviously from dancers/patrons, male or female, doing lines. Some bar managers used to spray the toilet tops with Pam or wipe them with oil. It was good for a laugh. Dancers would often spray down the poles before they would go on stage for their shows. It increases their grip, keeps their hands clean from when Mercedes or Destiny was just on stage with the pole, riding suggestively up and down their A-crack, and it also serves to get men's attention before she starts her show. The clubs truly are a crime scene specialist's dream. Fluids of every type available at every turn. I never understood why the clubs were carpeted and the couches were upholstered in porous materials. Oh, and the black lights are installed for aesthetics. They hide stretch marks and cellulite. It's just a side bonus that they also seem to bring out the stains in pants and t-shirts. TLDR, dance clubs are filthy. Story 7. So, I guess I'm technically a worker now. A friend of mine worked at a local club, bartender by day, dancer by night. On slower shifts, if someone paid her enough, we're talking at least 10x the usual rate. She'd throw in a little extra entertainment while tending bar. Nothing crazy, just some dancing or flashing. For context, where we live, dancers legally have to censor their jugs and wear bottoms at all times, even on stage. I worked nearby, so I'd often swing by the club for an hour before my shift, have a drink, and help her out with random stuff. The owner was chill, so I had free reign of the kitchen, dressing rooms, walk-in cooler, you name it. One day, it was just me, her, a couple of dancers, and this one random guy who walked in. Now, because she was bartending that day, not dancing, she wasn't censored. Just a short cocktail dress, no inners. And when it was just the two of us, she'd mess with me and randomly flash me to see how long it took me to notice. Classic friendship stuff. Apparently, this guy walked in right as one of those flashing moments happened and clocked that she wasn't wearing any inner. Naturally, he asked if she was doing dances. She said yes and gave him one. After the dance, the guy asked her if she'd wear an inner during her next shift, and if he could buy it afterward. But not just any inner, he wanted it used. Sweaty, worn all night, and yes, stained, as in skid marks. She was understandably horrified. She came over to me after, jaw dropped, relaying the whole thing. One of the dancers nearby just shrugged and said, "Fake it. Sell him the one from the closet for a free $50. So that's how we ended up with the plan. I, an average-sized largish man, would take a random inner from the dressing room and personally apply the stain the guy was asking for. Mission accomplished. I had to head to work after that, but she texted me the next day. He came back, she sold him the inner for $70, and he sniffed it on the spot before walking out of the club totally satisfied. So yeah, that's the story of how I accidentally became an S-worker. Story 8. My brother used to work at an adult shop that had what they called an arcade. Behind a door was a hallway lined with private booths on both sides. Each booth had a bench, a TV, and a selector switch that let you toggle between 6 adult films, usually split evenly between gay and straight, running on a constant loop. Customers paid a $9 entry fee, got a hand stamp, and could spend as much time in there as they wanted. Some even came back multiple times a day. Realistically, it was less an arcade and more a cluster of private rooms. Workers, mostly men, would hang out in the booths, offering their services to patrons. A lot of anonymous hookups went on, and people would bring in workers since it was cheaper than a motel room. Plus, the corn was included. Here's the kicker. Those booths were basically never cleaned. My brother said the owner would swing by maybe once a week to vacuum and wipe down any obviously nasty spots. That was the extent of the hygiene routine. Story 9. As a former bartender at regular bars, with friends who worked in clubs, I can tell you, cleanliness is rarely a top priority. Just like in most bars, it's more about what benefits the staff than what's actually sanitary. Tables and chairs? We don't really use them, so we don't care much about them. Most of the time, they're wiped down with the same dirty rag all night. Glassware isn't much better, usually run through a poorly maintained dishwasher, then handled by 2 to 4 people before it even gets to your table. This is why I always recommend using straws. Personally, I was one of the clean freaks. I kept my hands as sanitized as possible, even wiped them down with vodka a few times a night, and brought a clean towel from home for wiping things down. I always used sanitizer on the bar, tables, and equipment at the end of my shift. But honestly, most people don't. Wondering what we use for cleaning during a shift? Soda water. Because spraying Windex near someone's drink is a fast way to get yelled at, even if I'm not spraying the drink itself. As for the dancer pole and stage, you might see someone wiping them down, but that's usually for grip, not hygiene. Moral of the story? Lying on the floor of a club or nightclub is just as bad as you think it is. Same goes for sitting in booths, touching surfaces, or even brushing up against the staff. Story 10. Dance club manager here. I have worked in clubs for the most part of the last 11 years. I have forgotten more stories than I remember, but I'll try to remember a few for you. I live in a more conservative state, so we have a lot more laws governing us than some places do, but funny and stupid stuff still happens all the time. We had one dancer giving a guy a private dance. He puked all over the front of her. She went to the dressing room and was giving herself a quick cleanup with some baby wipes and planned on going home to shower. But before she could leave, she found out she still had 2 more hours of VIP dances left. She opted to stay and do the dances instead of showering. Another dancer, another private dance. It was the last song of the night. She turned her back on the guy to shake her buns at him. She wasn't watching him. In about 2 seconds, he whipped his dong out and spilled his smoothie on her back. She ran out of the dance crying. The guy walked out of the building before we even knew what happened. This hasn't happened at our club, but I have heard dancers talk about how other girls pissed them off, so they would literally squat over the bag of the hated dancer and take a dump in it. Some people come in with weird likings, having a lot of rules. We can't accommodate many of them, but for one guy we were able to. He has a thing related to foot. He would pay VIP dance price, basically an hour dance, for just one song if a girl would dance for him. He would ask them to keep their clothes on. He would then ask them to take their shoes off, scuff up their feet on the ground to get them nice and dirty, then ask permission to take pictures. If he was lucky, the girl would let him do a bit more. A good night in the club is when people come in, drop a lot of money on the workers, are super respectful, and leave with no issues knowing it is all a fantasy, and they are in the wrong place to find someone to sleep with. Story 11. I worked as a go-go bar DJ for over 5 years, and let me tell you, I've witnessed some wild stuff. One of the most memorable incidents was when a dancer, let's call her Bubbles, decided to steal another dancer's outfit, which belonged to Star. So, Bubbles does her usual rounds before going on stage, chatting with customers, getting tips, all normal stuff. She finishes her rounds and gets on stage to start dancing. Meanwhile, Star had been in a champagne room with a customer, which lasts about an hour and a half. After finishing up with him, she shows him out and heads straight to my booth, since DJs are responsible for collecting money from couch dances and similar services. There are cameras in all the private dance rooms, and the DJ is supposed to monitor them to make sure everything's safe and above board. While I'm counting out Star's payout, she looks around the bar and spots Bubbles, on stage, wearing her outfit. Star totally loses it. She rushes to the foot of the stage, screaming at Bubbles, throwing insults, and then, without missing a beat, jumps up on stage, walks up to Bubbles, and punches her right in the face. And just as if things weren't already bad enough, Bubbles, totally freaked out, has an unfortunate accident right there on stage, in front of the entire club. Yep, she crapped herself. I've got plenty of other stories from my time working there, so feel free to ask if you're curious about any other crazy moments. Story 12. Former male dancer here. Let me share a few stories. I'll save my favorite for last. There were a lot of unusual likings, but the weirdest one involved a guy who had a liking involving foot. This happened to a co-worker of mine. They were pretty common too. I had several customers ask if they could buy my used socks. One guy even tried paying me with everything from drugs to inners. Some customers would tell me I reminded them of their son and then immediately ask for a dance. That was always uncomfortable. Others would open up about being completely closeted, saying that if their best friend ever found out they were gay, they'd never speak to them again. It was sad, honestly. Our club once held a talent show, and I performed by unicycling on stage while dancing and blowing fire. It was definitely out of place, considering everyone else had more sexy acts. Mine was more of a circus performance. Once, a girl with some kind of disability, I later suspected Huntington's disease, came in. She had a strong lisp, shaky movements like Parkinson's, and used a cane. She was super odd, possibly homeless, and started telling me I was an angel while mentioning all the drugs she liked to do. As the night ended, she asked me to walk her home. I agreed, and she took me down an alley. Suddenly, she started loudly demanding that I call her dirty. It was incredibly awkward, but I said, you're dirty. Louder, she insisted. You're dirty. This went on for a while, until we reached an apartment building. She opened a window to a basement apartment, climbed in, and closed it behind her. It was an experience. And finally, I had a customer, an extremely nice, respectful, and intelligent guy, who apparently fell in love with me. I gave him my email address. He was visiting from New York, and later found out he wrote plays in his spare time. He'd even written one about me, using my stage name, Luke Nicholas. He submitted it to the New York Fringe Festival, and months later, I was in New York to see a play about me. After the show, he invited me up on stage to do a pole dance for the audience. There was a pole set up as part of the show, which I did. When I started stripping, I used to joke that one day my name would be in lights. I never thought it would actually happen. Story 13. I work as a door guy, and we have this regular older gentleman who we call Feeny because he looks exactly like Mr. Feeny from Boy Meets World. When he comes in, he just stands there and reads every single poster on the wall. He also spends an unreasonable amount of time, about 15 minutes, studying our promotion board, which honestly should only take 5 seconds. When he leaves, he does the same thing, as if anything's changed, even though the posters have been the same for 15 years. One day, I went to the bathroom, and my fellow door guy stepped in for a moment. When I came back, I couldn't find him anywhere, but I immediately noticed an awful smell in the foyer. It smelled like complete crap. I looked over at Feeny and said, "Man, it smells like crap out here, doesn't it?" He just stared at me and didn't say a word. My door guy then rushes up and hands Feeny a few towels from the bar. I watched as Feeny started wiping his leg, and when I looked down to the right, I saw a bunch of crap splatters. Feeny had frigging crapped himself in the foyer. He wiped his legs off by the front door and just left the towels on the ground, right next to the trash can. His favorite girl popped her head out and asked if I'd seen him. I just pointed to the mess on the floor. Now, she had to act like she didn't know what happened, all while trying to get money out of him. Story 14. I worked as a DJ at a few clubs, all owned by one guy, and each one managed by a different person. One club was spotless. Like nightly cleaning crew, bar crew kept a tight ship at both bars, champagne room out in the open, lots of colored lights, and the obligatory black lights, and the security staff wore tuxedos and the girls had actual changing booths to use in the back. High-class joint, and it showed. This was a bikini bar, not a club, but same vein still. On the other end of the spectrum, the fully bare bar was disgusting. Of the dozen or so times I rotated through that place over like 3 years, I don't think it ever got cleaned. Thankfully, they served beer and water in bottles, and since I worked there, I just grabbed my own, else I'd have never drank anything there. There was a group of girls that would sit on the busted-up chairs in the back between sets, completely bare, shoot up or snort whatever they could find between themselves, and just sit there, blasted out of their gourds staring into space, sometime drooling. Not joking, actual drool. Yeah, bare or not, that isn't hot. At least once I seriously considered buying a hazmat suit and incorporating it into a set, maybe call myself DJ Biohazard or something. The absolute worst thing I ever saw as a club DJ, possibly in my entire life, happened at this place. The stage was about a 4-foot by 4-foot platform with a little catwalk leading up to it, really narrow. If you sat on one side, you could high-five someone on the other side without stretching too much. The DJ booth was about 10 feet behind all this, and off to the side by the bar about 3 feet higher, so security, or I could see the whole floor. This one particular girl, a tiny little thing, like 4 feet 10 inches, or so had asked for Dragula while she was on stage, and I knew when she was talking to me that was seriously messed up. To the point where cute doesn't matter anymore, so messed up. Little did I know. So Rob Zombie's thumping away, and she's on the little catwalk, fully bare by now, with a few guys on each side. She's bent over one, trying to pick up $1 in her teeth while the guy behind her is getting the full view. Suddenly she grabs out and barely catches the pole as she starts retching all over the dude with the dollar. As he was pretty much directly underneath her head at the time, he did not escape at all. He looked like someone had dumped a bucket of sick on his head, which was still better than the guys behind the girl. About half a second after she starts puking, the other end erupts. She was empty Vesuvius spraying diarrhea all over the place. Reverse finger cuffs, projectile style. She even got some all the way up to the front of the DJ booth. She nailed 3 customers and 2 security guys without even looking. I still have problems believing that the volume of mass erupted from something so small, had I not seen and smelled it myself. Story 15. I let a bar friend take me to a gay bathhouse once. I will never go again. Imagine a roach motel with multiple floors and hallways. Along the hallways are rooms with no doors. Each room is different. Some have hammocks. Some have benches. Some have chairs, etc. All the walls were painted black. Guys will wander or hang out in their room, waiting for someone to come by. Banging is only allowed in the rooms. Every hallway is covered by camera surveillance, so you won't get away with breaking rules. It's terribly hot, humid, and smells like bare men. It's a mixture of sweat, body odor, and buns. Downstairs there is a locker, shower, vending machines, computer room, and a toy shop. Rubber dispensers everywhere. You must take your lower clothes off and wear a towel and your shoes. You can keep your inners and shirt on, but most go with just towel and shoes. Bare underneath. If you want your own room, it costs more. But if you're okay wandering around and finding someone who's already got a room, it's cheaper. If you don't mind the occasional weird smells or questionable cleanliness, it's a low-cost spot to crash while waiting for a morning bus. You might even score a bench or couch to nap on, if you can stomach it. The crowd is diverse. You'll see everything from older, less appealing guys to some surprisingly good-looking younger ones, but most fall somewhere in the middle. Not exactly eye candy, but not total trolls either. I ended up sitting in a public area watching TV for about an hour and a half, mostly because I needed to sober up. As soon as my friend reconnected with his ex, who just happened to be there, I took that as my cue to leave. Story 16. So yeah, I'm a dancer. At my last club, I worked as both a dancer and a bartender, so I knew how everything ran. It was a mid-sized club, about 40 girls total, with 3 stages. We were diligent about cleaning the poles. Every dancer wiped them down before each set, but the floors? The ones we're rolling around on during floor work? Those got cleaned twice a week. Just Fridays and Saturdays. So yeah, all those floor germs, they definitely make their way onto your lap. And as for the drinks, those bartender hands aren't exactly pristine after handling sweaty dancer money all night and then tossing limes into your glass. I worked there for 6 months, opening and closing shifts, and not once did I see the chairs actually cleaned. They'd get a quick wipe if someone dropped food or something, but that was it. And here's the kicker. This place had a great reputation. Story 17. I wasn't a dancer, I'm male. But I worked as a bouncer for a while and later moved up to a manager position. 2 stories always stand out from my time there. The first one was when a well-dressed guy rolled into our club. It was one of the nicer spots in the city, so we usually had a high-end crowd. This guy had a shiny Mercedes, tons of cash, and looked like he belonged. After a while, I noticed a commotion between him and about 6 or 7 other guys. I thought, oh, here we go, and went to check it out. One of the guys says, "This jerk tried to kiss me." So, I pull the guy aside, and sure enough, he admits it. I'm like, dude, what the hell? You can't just go around kissing strangers. He says, yeah, I know. So I ask him, ever had your bum kicked for this? His reply, yeah, all the time. The second story happened during my night shift. I came in at around 6 p.m., and there's this guy already sitting at the bar drinking. By the time I checked on him again, it was around 1 a.m., and he'd been at it for hours. At that point, he'd puked all over himself and down the side of his chair. So, me and a manager get him outside, where there's a guy grilling food. We give him some coffee, water, and a couple of hot dogs. About an hour later, as he starts sobering up, he tells us he's going to drive home, an hour away. We quickly shoot that idea down, convincing him to let us call a cab and get him a hotel nearby. He agrees, but as he's looking down at himself, he realizes something's wrong. He says, crap. Man, what the F? I got puke all over me. Some jerk just puked on me. My manager and I exchange a glance, and I say, you puked on yourself, man. He pauses, then says, no crap? Huh. And just like that, the cab pulls up, he gets in, and leaves without saying another word. Oh, and I almost forgot this one. I pulled into work one day and found a dead guy between the building and the dumpster. Apparently, he was getting a dance, had a heart attack, went outside to catch his breath, didn't realize what was happening, passed out face down, and passed away right there. That was a first. Story 18. This might be a pretty lame, but I haven't been to many clubs, so here we go. Picture this, rural Pennsylvania, a club right off a busy highway near some truck stops. The place is pirate/nautical themed, with inflatable palm trees, a fake tiki bar, and the whole vibe. It's basically a converted warehouse. I'm there for a friend's 21st birthday, and as we're about to head out, she walks in. Let's call her Alexis. She looks like she's in her early to mid-20s, and honestly, a very attractive lady. She steps onto the stage, and through the drunken haze, we notice she's an amputee. Her left leg was amputated below the knee. But I'm all for equal opportunity, so I'm like, all right, let's see what she can do. Then she reaches into the treasure chest on stage, the prop they use for the pirate theme, and pulls out a freaking peg leg. Yes, a peg leg. This poor girl fully committed to the pirate persona, even doing a Captain Morgan-style pose on stage. Oh, and no inners, of course. Fast forward to the end of the performance. She's walking around for tips, and we're all tipping her, because come on, we're not a-holes. She smiles at my buddy and says, thank you, and not a single tooth in sight. Then she asks him, have you ever had a gummy bear before? If you don't know what that is, feel free to Google it. Welcome to rural PA. Story 19. I worked as a bartender for about 3 months, which also meant I was the cook. The only people who really ordered food were the dancers, and most of the time, they just got fries. During the whole time I worked there, I never changed the oil or covered the fryer at night. One night, a guy ordered a burger, and when I grabbed a patty from the freezer, I noticed the expiration date, 1998. I was working there in 2004. When I asked the owner about it, he just told me to use them. I never saw anyone clean the floors or bathrooms. The only time I witnessed any cleaning was when a guy projectile vomited on the floor, and they mopped it up with dirty water. No sanitizer, of course. And the wine and champagne glasses? I washed them in a dirty sink with hot water and no soap. Now for the truly disgusting part, the full bear dances. One dancer asked the owner if she could skip the full bear requirement that week because she had a herpes outbreak, which, by the way, the owner had given her. He refused, so she was left bare, with visible herpes sores, grinding on guys. The sofas and chairs in the dance room were never cleaned, and I'm sure they were covered in disease and fluids of every kind. The club was notorious for being sleazy. The owner had been acquitted of 1 murder and 17 cases SA. But I didn't know that when I first started working there since I was new in town. So, I guess it shouldn't have been a surprise that hygiene was the last thing on his mind. Story 20. A club DJ here, currently redditing from the booth. Let's be real, it's not the cleanest environment. The staff genuinely does their best, and we've got a cleaning crew that comes in every night. But carpet in a club? Always a gamble. Between bare feet, spilled drinks, the occasional puke, and other questionable fluids, it's nearly impossible to keep things truly clean. Once that stuff seeps into the carpet, it's game over. Worst story. We had some weird event scheduled for the crack of dawn, like 6 a.m., don't ask. Most of the staff just stayed overnight, drinking, playing cards, hanging out. One of the bouncers, who'd had a bit too much, passed out on the floor. 2 days later, he had a full-blown staph infection in his arm. Story 21. I've been a dancer at my club for about 4 years now, and I've seen it with the lights both on and off, literally. I work at a club, and honestly, it's pretty nice and well-maintained. We've got private bathrooms, showers, and dressing rooms just for the dancers, which makes a huge difference. A professional cleaning crew comes in every single night after close. They vacuum, mop, wipe down everything. Even the bar gets a full clean every night. So yeah, at least in my experience, the place stays pretty spotless. That said, I can't speak for all the girls I work with. Some of them, not quite as fresh as the facilities, if you know what I mean. Story 22. It's honestly disgusting. We barely clean anything properly, and it always smells. I wear a ton of cologne just to block out the stench while I work. The dancers, in my opinion, are worse than the single guys. I've seen enough period blood to last a lifetime. I never sit on any of the chairs or couches unless they're by the bar. Some of the older furniture even as bed bugs. One of the waitresses and a few of the dancers got some kind of rash from it. My rule: always wear long sleeves and pants. Always. Story 23. Club bartender here. I would say the more upmarket clubs, here in Melbourne would be Spearmint Rhino, Men's Gallery, are kept clean and fairly hygienic. We have waitresses and bussies constantly collecting glasses and wiping tables. The poles and stage get cleaned after each show, and cleaners come in each night to vacuum and clean all the furniture. I would say the people who come in contact with the most germs would be the bartenders, as we handle all the cash and are constantly collecting and handling used glasses and shot glasses, as well as scrunched up napkins with God knows what bodily fluids on them. Also, we have raging cockroach infestation, which probably isn't too hygienic. Overall, I would say they are not the cleanest environments, but if you're a patron, I wouldn't worry too much. All glassware goes through the dishwasher between uses, and generally the bar area. Story 24. Work as a waitress at a popular club in Portland, Oregon, and I can confidently say the club is thoroughly cleaned from top to bottom every single day. At the end of each night, I'm responsible for cleaning the tables, mirrors, stages, and the dressing room. The dressing room is actually pretty clean. The girls leave their dishes and glasses behind, but nothing gross. There's no carpet, and the floors are mopped regularly. After the staff leaves, a cleaner comes in to sanitize the bathrooms as well. The kitchen is incredibly clean, and the food is top-notch. Everything, from the meat and cheese to the fruits, vegetables, and bread, is organic, and there are plenty of vegetarian and vegan options. Many of the items, like mozzarella sticks, dressings, and soups, are made right here in the club. I've never had anyone send food back, and it seems like everyone is consistently happy with their meals. I was initially a bit hesitant about working in a club, but the owners are fantastic, and the bouncers are excellent at handling any customers who may become problematic. Overall, it's a great place to work. Story 25. I've been DJing at a local club for a few months now, and based on the comments in this thread, I can confidently say our club operates very differently from most others. For starters, there is absolutely no banging in our club, so there are no fluids or rubbers to worry about. The place is cleaned almost constantly, and we have a high dress code for entry, ensuring that our patrons are generally respectful and cool. The VIP room is simple, just 4 chairs where private dances are performed. I monitor all the dances on camera, so I can see exactly what goes on in there. Overall, the club is in good shape and provides a clean, well-maintained environment. As for the dancers, they're a mixed bag. Some are professional, take their job seriously, and treat it like just another job. Unfortunately, others haven't brushed their teeth in months and may have a bit of athlete's foot, which can sometimes be noticeable from the stage. As a DJ, I end up handling a lot of the club's operations. It's more like being an MC. I organize dancers, run the music, bounce when necessary, and assist customers. Luckily, it's a pretty laid-back environment. So yeah, the club world has its own side. Just to clarify, I'm based in Canada. Story 26. Alright, here we go. I've been lurking on Reddit for months without any desire to comment, but threads like this always get under my skin. I've been an exotic dancer for 4 years, working in clubs across Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, and Oregon. I've been at big corporate spots and small dive bars. The women I've worked with are really dedicated to being clean. Showers before and after work, brushing teeth after every meal, and maintaining clean hair. If you want to make money, you need to smell good and exude confidence. As for the pole, it's cleaned with a rubbing alcohol solution, not Windex like some clueless patrons might think. If you've seen someone clean it with Windex, that's not normal, and the people handling it probably don't know what they're doing. The stages and railings are cleaned with the same solutions restaurants use to sanitize their food prep areas, typically a bleach and water solution. The cocktail waitresses usually do the cleaning, and they use this to disinfect the tables as well. The stages get cleaned in the morning and at night. While some clubs might neglect stage cleanliness, the railings are always properly sanitized, since that's where patrons set their drinks and tips. Most clubs I've worked at also hire a midnight cleaning service, which comes in after hours to deep clean the carpets, private dance areas, and bathrooms. They take care of the mess from patrons, including any spills or accidents. Story 27. I worked as a cook at a club in Tucson for a while. We had 2 locations, the East Club, which was upscale, and the West Club, which was more rundown. I worked at the West Club. It was absolutely disgusting. Every morning when I turned on the kitchen lights, I'd watch roaches scurry away and hide. The fryer grease was only changed every 2 weeks. If I could have done anything about it, I would have, but I was making $5 an hour under the table, and if I worked overtime, the boss would get upset. There were only so many hours I could work. In the club itself, it looked clean at a quick glance, but who knows how sanitary it really was. I remember one dancer rushing back to the dressing room, screaming, "Ah, he spilled his smoothie on my jugs." I've also heard dancers yelling at each other for rubbing their downtown areas on the pole. One time, a dancer didn't show up for her set, so we went looking for her and found her passed out in her car with a needle in her arm. The East Club was a completely different story. They kept things much more organized and professional. In short, if you're in a fancy upscale club, it's probably cleaner, but at a rundown budget club, you get what you pay for. Story 28. I worked as a security guard at a fully bare club in Salt Lake City called Paradise for a short time. It's since been shut down. Back in its prime, the place was something else. There were meth pipes hidden all over the place, bugs scurrying across the counters, and everything had this eerie glow from the black lights. The stage had actual human waste on it, left over from dancers with baby laxative-induced habits. They even had to bomb the place with pesticides every month to deal with lice outbreaks. One time, I emptied the trash, and it was filled with used rubbers, some of which were bloody. A wild guy smeared crap on the door handles, and then went to his car too. Well, let's just say he didn't hold back while the girls were walking in. They were allowed to serve juice, but no actual food. The owner, Jerry, was something else entirely. He had a hot tub room with a floating drugs pillow, and his house was wired with hidden cameras, just like the club. He took pride in the fact that every dancer had to please him to get a job. He was exactly what you'd imagine. It was definitely an experience. Story 29. I worked as a bouncer at a bar in the Greater Toronto Area, GTA, Ontario, known for having some of the dirtiest dancers around. Anyone from the GTA knows the jokes, like Tuesday is mother/daughter night, and if you can't spot the pregnancy scar, you you get a free dance, etc. Despite its hilariously grim reputation, the place was always packed on Friday nights. Upstairs had a dance club, and downstairs was where the dancers were. I can say with certainty that the floors were mopped, the carpets, vacuumed, and the bar surfaces wiped down with bleach every night, at least once. Bottles were taken out every night, and we even hired a kid who got paid $50 to clean the private booths after hours. The real issue wasn't the hardwood surfaces or upstairs, which were decently clean for a bar. It was the carpeted area downstairs that always felt sticky, like someone had just spilled a drink, no matter where you walked. The carpet was there for traction, since those ridiculous dancers' heels required it, even though most of the dancers could have cared less about their shoes. Honestly, some of the toothless farmers who picked carrots all day wouldn't care if they were in Uggs, Crocs, or barefoot. Story 30. I worked as a bouncer at a club in Atlanta that featured female dancers every night and male dancers from Thursday to Saturday, catering more to women than gay men. It was one of the few places in Atlanta where you couldn't buy a blowy or banging. Honestly, it was pretty clean for a club. It was a higher-end venue, so that helped. Now, the dressing rooms on either side were awful, but you'd never find any spunk stains on the couches, which can't be said for most other clubs I've visited in the area. I have a lot of friends in the business, and I've seen my fair share of things. Basically, if a place looks grungy, it's probably worse than you think. But if it's nice and upscale, then it's as clean as any other well-maintained establishment. Story 31. Yes, clubs aren't exactly known for white glove testing, much like a regular bar where things can get pretty sticky behind the counter. That being said, the barbacks who maintain the areas at the clubs I work at are pretty diligent about cleaning every night. At one club, there's a daytime guy who handles everything from cleaning to vacuuming, and at night, there are 2 to 3 barbacks who keep things tidy. Another club has a cleaning crew that comes in after 4 a.m. when everyone is gone, which is definitely needed. And yes, dancers can be messy. Imagine every filthy roommate you had in college, but with way more drama. Lots of it. Customers are no better in that regard. However, every club I've worked at does its best to maintain sanitation, with bathroom attendants and barbacks who actually do their jobs. Would I eat off the bar or chairs? Definitely not. But then again, no one would do that at a regular bar either. If you really want to see the nastiness, it's usually in the dressing room. Every couple of weeks, I hear the house mom yelling at certain dancers who are especially messy. Story 32. COVID has really been a buzzkill for a lot of single guys. For the past couple of years, many of us avoided clubs because of the pandemic. I wanted to go so many times just to watch the dancers and maybe get a dance, but I was hesitant about going to a crowded place like that. However, I finally made it to a club yesterday after a long time. I was determined to find the perfect dancer to spend my money on, so I ended up visiting 3 clubs in search of her. Eventually, I spotted a dancer performing on the pole with such grace. She had long, smooth legs, a flawless skin tone, and a captivating spark in her eyes. She noticed me watching and came over. I couldn't help but compliment her, as I was completely drawn to her. She was half European and half Lebanese, which I thought was an amazing combination. I decided to ask her for a private dance, and we headed to the top floor of the club, where she gave me the best dance I've ever experienced. I actually ended up spilling all my smoothie in my pants, and we weren't even banging. She just danced a little closely. I tipped her for her exceptional skills and the gorgeous beauty that she is. Story 33. My dances are so good they cause seizures. Thanksgiving Day, Atlanta, Georgia. Thanksgiving is always the best day to work in clubs because the crowd usually falls into one of 2 categories. A. People with no family, or B. People who can't make it home for whatever reason. So, everyone comes to the club to drink and forget about the holiday. By 9 p.m., I was already drunk and thinking about taking a nap in the dressing room, but it was my turn to go on stage. That's when a super frail, elderly man approached me, handed me $100, and said he wanted a dance from me later. After finishing my stage set, I went over to his table, and sitting next to him was a young lady. I assumed she was a cash-only companion girl. She couldn't have been more than 18 and was dressed in regular clothes. The old man says, "Have you met my wife, Jessica?" I freeze. No way was this young, stunning woman his wife. But then I noticed the ring. She had the biggest diamond I've ever seen on her finger. I shook her hand, and she immediately pulled me outside for a smoke. She reached into her bag, pulled out a flask, and offered it to me. "Do you party?" she asked. I told her I couldn't drink anymore, but she shrugged and said, "More for me then," before dumping what looked like vodka into her beer. "Did you just mix vodka and beer?" "That's disgusting." I wrinkled my nose. "No, it's just G," she replied nonchalantly. "Oh great, just GHB. We do it all the time," she added. "Right. I guess I would need to do that too if I were married to that old guy." Anyway, we went into the private dance rooms, and before I knew it, we were making out. She was smoking hot and not wearing inners, and I wasn't either. We kept going for a few songs, okay, maybe like 10 songs, before I told her, "Let's do one more song." She nodded, and I kept dancing. But then something was off. She wasn't just nodding, she was having a seizure. I panicked. There were no managers around, my phone was in the dressing room, and I didn't know what to do. I stood there flailing my arms, not wanting to leave her alone, but knowing I might not get paid if I didn't. After what felt like an eternity, she stopped shaking. I started asking, "Jessica, do you know where you are? Do you know what day it is?" But she just drooled on the floor. I hoisted her up and half-dragged, half-carried her back to where her husband was sitting. I was bare except for my 8-inch sparkly platforms. I threw her in the chair, then started looking for the old man. Where was he? The bathroom? The parking lot? Maybe he wandered off and passed away somewhere. I finally found him in the most expensive champagne room, buried under a pile of dancers. I waved, shouted, but his eyes were glued to one of the girls. I crawled between legs to avoid getting my face too close to any. "Well, you get the idea," and finally got his attention. "Your wife almost passed away. Would you like to do something about it?" He shoved the girls off of him, stomped downstairs, grabbed his unconscious wife, and stormed out the door. Meanwhile, I had to figure out how to tell the other girls they weren't getting paid for their dances. He came back in, completely unfazed, like nothing happened. "How much does she owe you?" he asked. "Sir, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Is she going to be okay?" "She does this all the time," he said casually. I took her to the car to sleep it off. "Now, how much does she owe you?" "You're just letting her sleep it off?" "Sir, I can walk on this tab. It's not a big deal, but I'm really worried about her." He said, "Come upstairs and dance with us now. I only have $100 bills, so whatever she owes you, you're just going to have to dance the difference with us." Annoyed and worried, but still needing to do my job, I went upstairs. $500 later, I decided it was finally time for my nap. I woke up around 1:30 a.m. thinking, might as well do a quick lap around the floor. I opened the dressing room door, and guess who's wide awake, back out of the car, and ordering another beer? I approached her slowly, tapped her shoulder, and said, "Jessica, you're awake. How are you feeling?" She looked at me, smiled, and said, "Hi, I'm Jessica. You're really pretty. Can I get a dance from you? Do you party?" Story 34. It was my friend Gooch's 21st birthday, and instead of the usual house party we always hit, he decided he wanted to go to a club. I'd never been, but I was drunk and feeling generous since I had just gotten out of a relationship and was keeping all my money for myself. We ended up blowing through $500 that night, with $80 of it being pickpocket during a dance. One of the dances was especially memorable. A dancer punched me in the nose with the center of her sequined bottom. It was as painful as it sounds. After that, Gooch told me we were up for a shower show, where I had to pay $100 to watch a girl shower on a stage in the back room, occasionally slinging water on us with her hair. Inconvenient, but I was too drunk to care. We stayed, got even more wasted, and kept getting dances until 5 a.m. when the lights finally came on. That's when I realized I'd locked my keys in the car. Gooch said he'd find someone to pick the lock and stumbled back inside. He returned a minute later with 2 dancers, one of whom was holding a giant metal flashlight. He explained, "Nobody could pick the lock, but these girls said they'd break your window open with their jugs out." Like that was a fair trade. I was too broke and out of time to call a locksmith, so I cringed, braced myself emotionally, and agreed. I even recorded it, but that video's long gone after a few phone upgrades. The girl seemed way too excited to smash my window with her chest. The next morning, I woke up flooded with regret, had a 2-hour anxiety attack, and rated the night a solid 6.43 out of 10. I ended up going back twice more. Story 35. Some of the clubs I've worked in were downright filthy, like shockingly bad. One spot hadn't been vacuumed since they took over the building from the last owner, over 10 years ago. Even the customers noticed how gross it was, And let's just say they didn't come back. The place I work at now is a whole different story, thankfully. We actually have health department inspections to keep up with, so the bar itself is spotless. Tables get wiped down after every shift, and the whole front of house stays pretty clean. But for some reason, the stage always gets overlooked. It drives the dancers crazy because it gets grimy fast. The pole gets wiped down with alcohol by the dancers between sets, and there's a big pump bottle of hand sanitizer nearby for everyone to use. The dressing room's pretty tidy most of the time, though the free box, where everyone dumps clothes, shoes, and random stuff they don't want anymore, tends to overflow. As for the dance couches, those aren't cleaned regularly, but since it's a clean club, there's no real concern about fluids. The carpet's definitely seen better days, but that's just par for the course at any bar. All in all, it's about as clean as a well-run bar, just with a little extra glitter. Story 36. I worked for about 2 months as a bouncer at a club through a private security company. One of the weirdest things was how the red lights were always on, opening, closing, even during the hours the place was shut down. I never once saw the club under normal white lighting. Early on, I picked up the habit of doing regular sweeps of the place, looking for things like loose cash, drugs, or needles. It started as curiosity, but I eventually framed it as a safety check, which gave me a valid excuse to keep it up. Most of the cash I found was just misplaced tips. Part of the sweep included checking the dancers' changing room after hours, usually right before I clocked out. Cleaning the place wasn't in my job description, thankfully. The club also served food, so I imagine the occasional surprise visit from the health inspector helped enforce some level of cleanliness, though I wouldn't have eaten there myself. Eventually, I landed a better job and left before the security company lost their contract with the club over a few incidents. I wasn't involved in any of that, thankfully. I kept things professional and was lucky. I never had to physically remove anyone or break up a fight. It was a wild job, but I got out clean. Story 37. I managed the day shift at a small club in the Midwest, and honestly, I spend half my day cleaning. I take a lot of pride in it, too, because I hate that clubs have this reputation for being filthy. But as many have said before, it's a losing battle. It's not like there's fluids lying around or anything, at least not in the clubs I've worked at, but the environment itself just wears everything down. Clubs get lived in fast. There's always going to be a certain smell, old cigarette smoke. Even if we're non-smoking now, the walls still remember. Layers of cheap perfume, sweat, humidity. It all just hangs in the air. Sure, I could tell you some disgusting stories. We all could. But I also want people to know that some of us are out here really trying. Next time you see your bartender, consider that maybe he spent 2 hours that morning scrubbing the men's room, trying to get a cranberry stain out of the grout that really looks like blood. Bleach doesn't work. Grime removers don't work. Even oven cleaner, stuff that dissolves anything, can't touch it. It is cranberry juice, right? Story 38. I used to work as a bouncer at a bar in the GTA, Greater Toronto Area, Ontario, one that's pretty infamous for having the dirtiest dancers around. If you're from the GTA, you already know the jokes. Tuesday is mother/daughter night, or spot the pregnancy scar and win a free dance. Total legends, for all the wrong reasons. Despite its reputation, the place was always packed on a Friday night. Upstairs was a dance club, downstairs was the club. And credit where it's due, the cleaning routine was actually decent. Floors got mopped, carpets vacuumed, bar surfaces wiped with bleach at least once a night. Bottles were taken out religiously, and we even paid a local kid $50 to clean the private booths after hours. The real issue wasn't the hardwood floors or even the club upstairs, which was relatively clean for a nightlife spot. It was downstairs in the carpeted area. That carpet had a permanent sticky feel, like someone just spilled a drink everywhere, all the time. It was nasty. The carpet was required, though, for traction, because most of the dancers wore those outrageous platform heels, even though their usual audience, toothless carrot-picking farmers, bless them, wouldn't have cared if they were in Uggs, Crocs, or barefoot. Sticky, sketchy, and yet somehow always full. Story 39. Throwaway account here. Former exotic dancer, everything you've said is pretty spot on. But there's one point I really want to emphasize. Please, please, please don't try to do it with the dancer in the champagne room. Not only is it wildly expensive, but it's also a guaranteed way to part with your money and your dignity. You could easily shell out hundreds of dollars just to maybe get a hand job. And that's after you've Paid $300 plus for the champagne. Tipped the bouncer $40 to look the other way. Slipped $40 to the server who brings the drinks. And tipped the dancer, who's probably only pocketing $40 to $60 of that room fee. And if the dancer's not into it, which happens a lot, congratulations, you're now out a few $100 and still going home alone. For that price, you could have just booked a legit escort and saved yourself the awkward negotiation. Can you pick up hookers at clubs? Sure, but it's not like ordering off a menu. You've got to play it smart, be respectful, discreet, and patient. If something's going to happen, it'll be outside the club, at a later time, with a whole different set of expectations. Also no, you don't want to hook up with a dancer right after her shift. By the end of the night, she doesn't want to flirt. She doesn't want to drink. She doesn't want to touch you. What she wants is to go home, take the hottest shower humanly possible, scrub the glitter out of places she didn't know could glitter, brush her teeth, and pass out. Story 40. I've worked in a few clubs over the years, and here's the short answer to the question of how clean they are. Not very. Pro tips from the trenches. If there's a cover on a couch, do not remove it. The club doesn't, and trust me, what's underneath is not for the faint of heart. Avoid anything draped in flowing fabric. That includes walls, curtains, chairs, or anything that looks like it came from a haunted boudoir. If it's soft and covered, it's holding secrets, and probably fluids. If it looks like it could be used as a trash can, someone has used it as a trash can. Carpet rolls, cardboard boxes with holes, you name it. And don't be fooled, the nice clubs aren't always better. The only real difference is that the drugs tend to go up in price with the decor. To be clear, not all dancers are on drugs, but enough are that it's worth mentioning. Now about those black lights. They're not just for the mood. They're used by staff to spot stains for cleanup, when it happens, but also conveniently obscure blemishes, stretch marks, and smooth out skin tones. Helps keep the fantasy alive and sometimes, let's be real, softens features that might turn certain guys off. If you ever do see someone cleaning, it's usually for effect. During slow hours, dancers might clean mirrors or poles in a suggestive way. It's part of the show. Mirrors are kept clean mainly for two reasons. 1, they let men sneak glances without looking like creeps, and 2, security. Staff, DJs, and management need to keep an eye on everything. Survival tips. Bring your own bills. Club singles are recycled more than fast fashion and have been in far too many places to count. Sit only on hard, non-porous surfaces. Bacteria struggle to survive there, unlike in that cozy-looking velvet booth. Avoid anything that feels inviting. Skip the champagne room. Whether there's banging in there or not, it's a total ripoff. Save your money and your dignity. Remember, it's fantasy, not reality. The dancers are there to sell an illusion. Play along, boost your ego, enjoy the performance, but also keep in mind you're probably sitting where hundreds of other men left their fallen soldiers. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss